Blessings and love. So, before I get into today's reading from the book of Joshua, which starts today, what I usually do is give an overview context of the book I'm about to start reading to give a bit of an introduction. And I think it's really important to do that with this next book. The book of Joshua is attributed to Joshua the prophet, and it chronicles the going into the promised land by the children of Israel into the land of Canaan and essentially taking that land and fulfilling God's promise. Now, it has to be said that the next 24 days, because there's 24 books in the in the book of Joshua, is going to be a bumpy ride for me doing readings and reasonings, and for the listeners, because it's known to be one of the most violent books of the Bible, and for that reason one of the most controversial, because the going into the land of Canaan and taking that land is an extremely violent affair, by no means peaceful, and it's said by some scholars to be a massacre and a genocide and a forerunner of colonialism and these kind of things. So it's by no means an easy book theologically or historically to kind of digest. So I'm going to be digging deep to do the readings and the reasonings. And it's an interesting one also because many biblical scholars read the book of Joshua as an allegory rather than literal. And one of the reasons for that is because it's attributed to have written many years after the fact, when after the Babylonian exile, when some of the tribes of Israel came back together, there was a need to have a galvanizing effect on the children of Israel to form them as a nation again. And many biblical scholars see it written in that time as a text to galvanize a strong sense of Hebrew identity. So the timeline, many biblical scholars say, isn't quite as accurate as it might be portrayed here. And they also say the language of annihilation and massacre and that level of violence would not also be accurate. That would have also been hyperbole and exaggerated, because very soon in the book of Judges, we see Canaanites living amongst them and around them, whereas in the book of Joshua it talks about the complete annihilation of anyone from Canaan. So we know straight away that Canaanites still lived, they still survived. So what was described in the book of Joshua as complete annihilation wasn't accurate. That is an exaggeration. So for many it's seen as an allegory rather than literal. And it's also interesting because for the violence in the book of Joshua, which is violence meted against others, in the next book, in book of Judges, we see that violence turn in on itself and be violence against themselves, because the children of Israel start to disintegrate their sense of unity as soon as they land and settle in the promised land. So for many, again, biblical scholars, they see that as kind of the mirror image, even though the violence and the actions of the children of Israel are seen to be sanctioned by God in the book of Joshua. Actually, in Deuteronomy, it says that the children of Israel should not gloat, should not act dishonorably when they are victorious in war. And what we see in the book of Joshua is anything other than, a righteous or humble victory. We see a very kind of violent and could say respectful approach to violence, and that turns in on itself in the book of Judges. So as violent and as vitriolic as the book of Joshua is seen to be, the behavior of the children of Israel and the sins that they start to commit is anything far from a victorious kind of glory, afterglow from Judges, and the punishment starts to be meted on them themselves. So the rest of the book after that, I'm not going to go into the full dissection of the biblical context, but when we see the good news in Jesus Christos with the New Testament, it's a complete opposite to how the children of Israel are seen to be behaving here, is then what's sanctioned by Jesus Christ in terms of how he wants the people to be behaving. So the book of Joshua very much stands alone with what we see the children of Israel doing, but they're by no means are they rewarded for it, because in the next book, Judges, we see that start to disintegrate. So even though within the book of Joshua they're not rewarded for their behavior, they're also not they're also not castigated, but in the fullness of time you see that they're not rewarded. So the warning in the book of Deuteronomy, do not be gloating and act dishonorably at times of victory, we see that punishment of that being seen through in the fulfillment of time. So it's going to be a bumpy one. You know, I've given away lots of spoilers there, but I think it's important that we're prepared for the road ahead, because the book of Joshua and the book of Judges are both violent. So the next 45 days really are going to be a challenging one. But, you know, in the spirit of what I'm doing is going in with my eyes wide open, being honest and transparent as I can be, and just seeing where the lessons and the teachings and the meditations take us with each chapter one day at a time, and reflecting on it and being as honest and true as I can be. So blessings and love, and I will post this and then I'll be back with Joshua 1 for the first reading of today. Give thanks.